Defining the hustle. Everyone has their own definition of what it means to be a hustler. For some, the word has got a negative connotation to it. It's associated with being a little aggressive or maybe even shady. Not in my world. Maybe it's because hip-hop removed the stigma for me. Or maybe it's because of my own experiences. But to me, a hustler is somebody who gets things done. Someone who makes sure that not a single one of their people goes to bed hungry. Because they're diligent. Hustlers turn negatives into positives. They're resilient. They believe in themselves and they're never downbeat. Nor are the people they choose to hang out with. They don't hang out with losers. They find solutions rather than excuses. And they are constantly on the lookout for the next big thing. They never stop seeking for growth. They're creative in their thinking, unpredictable and very disruptive. They do the undoable and they cannot be ignored. They are the movers and shakers who make things happen. You may think what defines a hustler is pretty similar to what defines an entrepreneur. And while that's certainly true, there's a subtle difference. You can't be a hustler if you don't have a heart. That's why I love the concept of social entrepreneurship, which again bears more than a passing resemblance to hustling. Social entrepreneurs could probably achieve far much more than they do, from a financial perspective at least, if they had chosen to focus solely on themselves and turn a blind eye on the challenges facing our continent. But they don't. They put their families and their communities above self. I encourage the people who follow me to understand that when you establish a business, you don't do so just so that you can make a living. Your business isn't just for you. It's for your family too, your entire community. I was once asked if it was possible to start a business and keep your family out of it. My answer: no, you can't. And I repeat, it's not just your family that must be supported by your business, but your entire community. Because we are African, we have to do everything we can to help others. That's why I always say that whatever your goal is in establishing a business, you cannot be driven just by profits alone. Rather, you need to have a sincere desire to want to empower people. I always say that all the inventions that have come up with scientists have been creative and amazing and great. But the sad thing about the world is that all those researchers and those research centers have been financed by, some of the wealthiest people in the world who own 96% of the world's wealth. While you've got 4% of the world's wealth spread amongst hundreds, or let me just say billions of people who are poor and struggling. But it's because the people that are in control that are running the world, I think they're evil people. Because if they were not, with so much amount of wealth, with so much amount of technology that we've amassed, we could be able to end poverty and make human existence to get to the next level. But no, we don't. It's all about the Reserve Bank and it's all about the dollar, the pound and the euro. Anyways, getting back to what I was talking about. Rather, you need to have the sincere desire to want to empower people instead of only focusing on profit. As I've already said about the people that run the world, I think they're run by greed. And guess what? Once you do this, just focusing only on profits, yes, the profits will come. As investment genius Warren Buffett once said, the companies that put empowerment before profits are the ones that last for generations. Well, myself as Usbusi, so having studied all these successful people and businesses, I've decided to structure all my businesses with this in mind. The older I get, the more I come to understand that there really is no I in team. That's why everything I do is for my community. All entrepreneurs have got the responsibility to empower the communities. We cannot really solely rely on government to do this. Nor is this the job of just the private sector. Although it would be wonderful to see corporate South Africa change its mindset, which some companies are doing great, but hey, right now things are not doing so well because it looks like many people are going to lose their jobs over the next couple of years. Well, I think corporate South Africa, the mindset should change. They should become more concerned with well-being of communities. In fact, when we established the Hustlers Academy, one of our intentions was to encourage corporates to change the way they approach their objectives. We'd like to see them promote hustling in their own environments so that every employee becomes a corporate hustler. Someone who has got a job, but who sees the organization as their own company, who treats it like it's their own company, rather than doing the job just to earn a paycheck and go back home. I understand that often when people have got this type of negative attitude towards their job, it's because they feel that their employers do not care for them. We need to change this too. Companies need to look after their people. They need to find ways to reward their most hardest working people. Because when people are well incentivized, their loyalty cannot be questioned. That's why some of the most successful CEOs are the ones who take the best care of their employees. After all, what is a company without its people? In spite of our insights, the Hustlers Academy is not aligned to the private sector. You could almost say that we support the other extreme. We want to shift the country's mindset so that instead of focusing on jobs, we get everyone to start thinking hustle, hustle, hustle. Business, business, business. Entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship. Well, I'm talking about an entrepreneurial mindset. There needs to be no ceiling as to how much employees can earn in a corporate environment. Well, I doubt a lot of these companies will consider these type of things in the future because of robotics coming through. Instead of them thinking that way, they'll probably be thinking of getting rid of all the stuff so they can make all the money themselves using machines. Anyways, we want to change the narrative as the Hustlers Academy so that people embrace the concept of entrepreneurship and become entrepreneurs. We have to. We've already seen that the emphasis on creating jobs isn't working. Youth unemployment in South Africa is at an all-time high. To make this happen, we need the young people to have grown up as hustlers to set an example, so that hustling is seen as cool, which is my job currently in South Africa and in the entire African continent. I'm working so hard every day to eventually change the mindset around young Africans that we can see hustling as cool. I'm trying to make it cool because I believe I'm a cool person and I'm a hustler. I'm pretty much trying to turn these young people into entrepreneurs, but obviously using words that they can relate to, words like hustle. That's why I call myself a hustler, and they can easily relate to that. These young people, they need to live this ethos as well. We have to understand the position that God has put us in. We all have greatness in us. There's a leadership vacuum on our continent currently, and entrepreneurs like you and I, we must take charge. Like it or not, we have to step up to be new leaders, especially social entrepreneurs, because we do care about our community, especially about our beautiful continent of Africa. We have to lead from the front, always keeping our people in mind. Africa is the youngest continent with the youngest people globally. Maybe it is time for young leaders, guys. What do you think? I know that the South African public sees me as one of our country's most promising youth leaders in entrepreneurship. I've grabbed that honor with both hands and the responsibility that comes with it too. I've run with it and I've helped to build a lot of other hustlers in the process. And I can't wait to build a new generation of young people who think with the mind of a hustler, rather than adopting an old entitled employ me type of a mentality. I'll say it again, not jobs, 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 but hustle, 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 business, 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 entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship. Finally, remember, hustle will always be talent when talent doesn't hustle. The 5 steps to a sale. So you think making a sale is a simple transaction, right? Your customer hands over the money and you hand over your service or product, right? Wrong. Actually, it's more involved than that. If you want to be successful, that is. A person who's able to close one deal after another follows a process to closing a deal. Different business people do it differently. But what has always worked for me is a system I call the 5 steps to a sale. I've used this all my life since I learned it at age 17, selling in the streets of Johannesburg, South Africa. I was taught by a gentleman by the name of Linda Zwane at a sales and merchandise company called WWI, Worldwide Wholesalers Industries. I've used it everywhere. I've used it in closing deals from music, radio, television, endorsements, and campaign deals. I have used it in boardrooms, negotiating and closing deals with some of the most experienced business minds in South Africa. I've used it to turn my ideas into companies that are now worth a few millions, some of them still in debt, but we're still growing since we are still in the startup phase. But you can see that there is a vision into where we are going. But it all just started small, with me learning how to close that deal. And for me, this simple system works. I'm gonna take you through it. All I can say is that I've learned a great deal about becoming an entrepreneur and I practice it daily. Not that I'm good at it, I think I'm getting better every day, because as human beings, we are beings who are here to learn and become better every day. And I've allowed myself to learn about entrepreneurship on a daily basis. And it all started from selling in the streets with the 5 steps to a sale. It is more like a sales pitch, starting with an introduction, which is step 1. Then you go on to presentation of your service, product, business, idea, which would be step 2. Then you get into a short story. You talk about your service, product, brand, step 3. Before closing, which would be your step 4. And then giving a brief rehash, that would be your step 5. Summary, step 1, introduction. Step 2, presentation. Step 3, short story. Step 4, close. And step number 5, rehash. Now let's break these down so you get a better idea of what they entail. First, there's an introduction on step number 1. Now this literally is where you walk up to your target or potential customer or client, even if it's in a boardroom. You tell them who you are and what you have to offer. Of course, it takes confidence to do so. And the more confident you are, the greater the impression you will make. That's why it's most important to create eye-to-eye contact from the moment you meet your potential client or customer. And you gotta greet them with a simple compliment. Give them eye contact, a smile, a firm handshake. I repeat, a firm handshake, not very, very tight, as some of you guys do it, especially the bodybuilders. I'm kidding, guys. Now, these steps show your customer that you respect them and you put your way to building a relationship by smiling, giving them a nice compliment, looking at them straight in the eye, and that firm handshake. Now, remember to hold that eye contact while you're talking to the customer. This is crucial for building trust. And as you speak, there must just always be that enthusiasm in your speech. You must just show that you're excited to be speaking to this customer. Now, you are raising the vibrations of your energy, which is always a positive thing when you're engaging in sales. It's linked to your conscience and integrity, looking at the customer straight in the eye. Now think about it. Remember when you were a kid and you lied to your parents? The fact that you couldn't look at them straight in the eye was a giveaway that you were not telling the truth. As adults, being unable to hold eye contact makes you look a bit untrustworthy, guilty, or maybe even shifty. Looking someone in the eye also shows them that you take them seriously. You take yourself seriously. And that's a feeling everyone wants. It's immediately going to make them more open to what you have to say to them. In other words, you can't break the ice. The smile is also important. It shows warmth and helps to break the ice. Plus, it shows a positive attitude, which is an attribute people are instantly drawn to. Smiling is a universal language. You can smile at anyone, anywhere, and they'll know you have good intentions. And it's impossible to feel angry at someone who's smiling at you. This makes your smile a great business tool. Try it, it's for free. I smile all the time. As for the handshake, you might want to gauge the situation and the person before you go for it. Our world is becoming increasingly informal. Added to this, there's more than one style of handshake out there. Our 3-stage African handshake is a case in point, for example. So it might not always be necessary, especially if you're dealing with someone who's a bit younger. Personally, I feel that it goes a long way to establishing trust. But there are a couple of rules here. First, keep it palm to palm, not fingers only. And make it firm. There's nothing worse than a loose handshake. Physically, it feels sloppy and uncomfortable. And it sends the sign as if the person greeting you is not that excited to meet you. But it also gives the feeling that the person you're dealing with is weak rather than dynamic and confident. On the other hand, crushing someone's hand gives the impression that you're pushy and domineering. So you want to find a balance between these two. A nice firm handshake with a nice smile, respectfully, that eye contact, don't forget. Now there's your image. I like to think of clothes as your second skin. It's very easy for people to write you off or fail to take you seriously if your appearance isn't up to scratch. When you're working in a professional environment, you have to look professional at all times. Guys, I repeat, you have to look professional. Well, unless you're running your own business or you're calling the shots, but you gotta do as the Romans do. If the dress code in that particular environment is such or a certain way, you gotta follow the protocols. So when it comes to appearance, you need to have your A game, guys. You gotta have your A game. A lot of you guys have been following my career for over the years, you know. When it comes to Impahla, I don't compromise. I always make sure that I look the part. I looked the part of being an entrepreneur / businessman way many years ago before I was even one. But because in my mindset I was already seeing myself as one, I've always tried to put my A game on point because I knew that I'm engaging in places of business and I'm trying to grow myself as an entrepreneur, as a business person. So hey, you gotta be at your A game always when it comes to your image. Some people look at it as faking it until you make it. I look at it as dressing for the position you want. If you look the part, people will respect you even more. Simple as that. Having introduced yourself, you need to introduce your customer to whatever it is that you're selling. It's time to present your service or product. This is your chance to explain what it is and how it will add value to your customer's life. Of course, how you tackle this depends on your product offering and who you're selling to. Someone selling a 20 rand cool drink at a robot will have a very different approach to someone who's trying to convince a room full of potential investors to purchase a stake in their brand or in their company. That being said, both of these audiences are very likely to have one thing in common. Always, everyone who's approached by someone trying to sell them something is initially quite skeptical rather than open to what they have to say. That's why it's so important to break the ice. One of the quickest and easiest ways to do this is by giving your customer a compliment. It almost always convinces people to drop their guard a little. Because people are open to anyone who makes them feel good about themselves. There is a but though. It has to be sincere. Don't tell a mom with a baby who's obviously struggling from lack of sleep that she looks glamorous. And don't tell someone that you love their outfit if you can see that they didn't take any care putting their clothes together. Like it's just so plain obvious that their outfit doesn't look good. Don't lie with an open lie like that. You'll just come across as dishonest and disingenuous. And the door that you are opening or trying to open will end up getting shut firmly. Now that you have your customer's attention, it's time to tell them everything they need to know about the product or service and how it'll make a difference in their lives. Now this is where your short story comes in. See that word, short. It's vital because people tend to lose interest very quickly. If you take too long, you're gonna lose them. It's a simple correlation. The longer you take to tell your customer about your service or product, the less interested they will be. So move to your point quickly, ideally within a few minutes. If it's an open pitch to a stranger, just make sure that you put it this way. If you're selling a complex product or service in a boardroom, your target should know within half an hour whether or not they're in. If it's a cheap product known as a low involvement, because there isn't very much emotional investment in the purchase, it will take far less time. And if you're in an interview, which is, after all, just another form of selling, your potential employer should know whether or not you're hireable almost as soon as you sit down and open your mouth. In fact, you should start your close as soon as you can see that you have their interest and they're excited about what you're talking about. I think of this as the ABCs of hustling. Always be closing. ABC. Commit them to a sale without giving them the option of saying no. For example, instead of saying, so you'd like to buy one, right? Are you gonna buy? Don't say that. Rather say, how many will you take? Will you take 4 or should I actually give you 6? Can I give you 2 or 3? You know what I mean? Just give them those types of options so they can say, no, I don't want that much. I'll just settle to 2 or I'll just take 1. You know that you've closed them by giving them options. Don't give them option to out. So it's not, are you buying or not? It's, how many are you buying? 3 or 4? Suggest for them or suggest on their behalf. That's what we call assuming a sale. Closing. Closing comes with the assumption that you've already won. It's like life. Whatever you're going for, mentally you gotta already assume that you've already won. Whether you're going for a sister, you're proposing to a girl, or you are going for your dreams, whatever it is, mentally you gotta assume that you've already won. Don't do it with doubt. So it's the same. With the close, assume they're buying, but how many are they buying? Without having to give them an option of out. Step number 5 would be rehash. Yes, they've bought, yes, they're excited, but on the previous example that I've just made, I immediately included rehash as well, because rehash is when you're trying to get them to buy more. You should still try and take advantage of the moment to try and upsell them, get them to commit to taking even more to this, make them feel as though they're getting a great deal or that you're doing something special for them. I'm sure you've seen it as well, cell phone stores or furniture shops where you guys buy your appliances or groceries or clothes. They always make you feel like they're doing you a deal, like you're saving money. There's no saving, you are spending. It's like when somebody says to you, It was 1,000 rands, but I'll only sell it to you for 7.99. You are saving 200 rands. And you're like, come on, get out of here. I'm spending 800. There's no 200 rands that I'm saving. But you know what? It's a psychological thing that they're playing with your mind. That's what you gotta do to your client. This is the exact same tactic that banks use to get you to join them. They'll tell you that if you sign up with them, you'll receive a benefit like free bank charges for a couple of months. And if you're in, they'll try to sell you more products. Your cell phone company works according to the same principles. You're probably still with the same network that you signed up with years ago, because they keep offering you deals that seem to keep you kept into that company. Just like how Edgar's and True Words signed us up earlier on in our lives when we were still students back in the days. They signed us up by offering us upfront credit to purchase clothes on credit, which we didn't need. We call this the rehash. It's basically trying to get your customer to commit that little bit extra by making them feel that you're giving them a great value. Car dealerships are very, very good at this. In an ideal world, everything would go smoothly and your customer would willingly sign up for 10 of everything that you're selling. Realistically, nah. You have to be prepared for them to push back. And when they do, you have to be ready with a convincing response. For instance, if they say that they're not interested in buying your product because they already have one, suggest that they buy one for a relative or for a friend. If they say that they don't have enough money, offer them a discount. If they flat out tell you that they don't want one, move quickly to highlight the reasons why they actually need one. Notice the operative word, need. Think of it as asking for a girl's number. That's if you're a guy. I'm sorry for those who are offended by this statement. It's just a simple, silly example. If she gives you reasons why she doesn't want to give you her number, you'll persist with your own reasons why she should, until she agrees to give you the number. But just as you need to stop if she's seriously about not giving you her number and she's adamant that, hey, leave me alone, I gotta go, you also need to stop if you can see that you're really starting to irritate or you're getting nowhere with your customer. If they really aren't interested in what you have to say, give it up and move on to the next customer so they do not waste your time or end up getting annoyed or irritated. Remember that customer can still buy from you the following day or on a different day, so you don't want them to block you from coming in the future. You can also play on the customer's fear of loss. Yes, we call it fear of loss. FOMO comes up when I talk about this, and you can use it in your advantage. If the customer tells you that they'll think about it or they're going to buy later, or maybe that they're not 100% keen, you can come back to them with something like, all right, but everyone wants one of these. Everyone has been buying it the whole day. This is a special, they're ending. And I'm not even sure if our company is going to be stocking them next week. They're selling really quickly. I'd hate for you to lose out. Make it seem as if you're doing them a favor. In fact, I just can't let you walk away without taking one. Let me just give you 2 actually. As a matter of fact, let me give you 5. They're gonna end up saying, no, just go. Actually, I'll just take 1. You know what I mean? You gotta be persistent at some point, but not too much. You gotta read the person at the same time. Now, you'll be the only one person going without if you don't buy this. For example, you say something like that. Street hustlers at taxi rank or street corners or shopping malls, they use this trick a lot. I'm talking about the guys who they use this trick a lot of times. They'll say something like, I'm just giving it to you for free. Maybe you're parking your car at the robots are selling to you. They're like, no, free. It's like the guys that want to come clean your windows. Like, no, don't worry. You don't have to pay me. I'm just cleaning, just free. Just free, yes, I'm serious, free. And look, and then you're like, okay. But just because you dress smart and you look so, a lucky lady, just give me 10 rand. Just okay, just 10 rand. Guys, always remember this. Nothing is for free. I say it again. Nothing is for free. Always remember that. It's just a trick to get them interested before you go for a close. If you practice these tools regularly and you perfect them at some point, you're gonna grow as a salesperson. I still use the same system every day. It doesn't change, no matter what it is that you're selling. That's why some people end up calling me a guerrilla marketer. It is because they don't have the term to describe my attitude when I'm on any platform. Go back and watch or listen to any of my old interviews. I'm always looking for an opportunity to sell something, especially when I know that I've got television airtime or radio airtime. I'm gonna make sure that I slip in anything that I'm selling to the public, because that is exactly what big operations do. That's what big companies do on a daily basis. You look at a small-time player like myself and you're like, he's a guerrilla marketer. But that's what the company you work for does on a daily basis. That's what the companies that advertise to you on a daily basis on television. on billboards, on cell phones, on your phone calls. Everywhere they do this on a daily basis, but you're not even aware of it. It is always about the bottom line, guys. Everyone is always trying to sell you something. But there's only one thing you have to work on, and that's your attitude. You have to stay humble. Humility. No one likes working with people who are arrogant. Humility, on the other hand, it can move you from a street corner to offices with a view. It can move mountains and open doors for you. It's hard to feel threatened by someone who's clearly humble. On the contrary, humility makes people open up. It makes them more willing to help you. And it's key to building relationships. Important because the more relationships you have, the wider your network will become. That in turn means that you have a chance to be exposed to more opportunities. Humility is only one aspect of attitude though. To succeed, you need to have a great attitude overall. Whether you're selling books, energy drinks, or you're selling your company shares, or you're selling your entire business, this means that you have to watch out for being too greedy. For instance, although upselling is an integral part of the sales process, don't be too ambitious when you're trying to encourage your customer to buy more. If you overdo it, you might well lose the entire sale. You gotta do it well by reading the person you're selling to, and they're certain to buy from you again. There are some other factors though that you need to consider when you start on your hustle. The first of these is the popularity of your product or brand or service that you're selling. Of course, when you hear the word popularity, you'll think that this is a positive attribute that works in your favor. And you'd be right, but only to a certain extent. The thing is that your product might be a fleeting favorite, and you'll have to move quickly to take advantage because maybe everybody wants it out there. There are also cons that come up with being in hot demand. Yes, really. For instance, the more popular your product is, the more other salespeople will try to get in on the action. It's like the most popular or hot girl on campus, or maybe let's say a hot guy in school. In this scenario, you run the risk of your territory becoming saturated. Before long, you'll be wasting your time because everyone who wants what you have to sell will have bought one already from other people. When this happens, it's time to change the area you're working in, or as we in the industry call it, your territory. Choosing the correct territory is one of the most crucial keys to your success, but it doesn't stop there. Once you've identified your territory, you also have to work it correctly. I'll make an example about people in South Africa who move from small cities to Johannesburg. They're changing territory. That's also part of changing territory. But if you are a salesperson, or when you are a salesperson, how do you do this? Well, first, as I've said, you have to select a zone that you feel has the right potential. Don't choose a place just because it looks affluent. There's no guarantee that people will buy what you're selling just because they've got money. In fact, you might find that people are far more receptive to what you're selling in an area that at first looks altogether less promising. It all depends on your service or product or brand. So maybe your selection with this in mind can help you. The guys selling toys and sweets at the zoo are a great example to this. The items they're selling are sure to be a hit with the kids walking in and out of the zoo. And because parents are either feeling indulgent or maybe a little bit worn out, it's highly likely that they'll give in when their children start whining to buy them something. I mean, other things to think about: how big is your territory? You got to think about how big your territory is. How will it work? Or how are you going to work on it? In other words, what's your plan for approaching your target? How many hours will you have to spend in that territory? Are there any competitors in the area? And if so, how will they affect you? Don't immediately assume that it's a bad thing to have rivals in your territory. Their presence could, in fact, work in your favor. They might lure in more potential clients who know that your particular item or product or service is being sold in that particular spot. You might just benefit from the crowds that they bring. Although I said earlier that if an item, service, brand or product is very popular, a territory can become saturated very quickly. The opposite might also be true. If you've taken a bit of a break from an area, it might be worth making a return to see if the demand has returned, especially if interest in the product, service or item or brand was particularly strong. Again, this is dictated by what it is that you are selling. Demand for some services, products or brands will never die. Think about cold drinks, for example. It doesn't matter how many bottles you sell, you'll probably come across someone else who's feeling thirsty. Now think about a product like, say, shaving machines or razors. There's no reason for a customer to buy more than one. So unless there are lots of people needing a shave in that one area, you're probably not going to be able to make multiple sales in a single territory. Price point is another consideration. It's another factor that will determine where you should stake out your territory. For example, you'd be wasting your time selling luxury clothes in a squatter camp, where you know very well if there's extra money, we're going to spend it on things that matter to us, things that we need, things that are essentials. We're not just going to spend it on things that we don't need. I mean, I know for myself as Busiso, I've sold music all my life, and I've always been aware that people spend on entertainment as a by the way, but it's not their need. So I've always been conscious and aware of these type of things. Now, think about seasons or natural elements. These two have a bearing on your territory. You wouldn't choose to work an outdoor territory on a rainy day because few people would brave the weather, and that means you'd have fewer opportunities to make a sale. On the other hand, if you're selling World Cup merchandise during the World Cup season, or maybe you're selling water and cold drinks on a very hot day, you stand to make a killing. You'd be mad to stay away and not take advantage. When choosing your area, it's always a good idea to look for a place that's well populated. Imagine this scenario. You've decided to work at an industrial area where there are several big factories. If you manage to get inside and speak to the staff, you stand to make lots of sales from the hundreds of employees that work inside. One might just buy, and then everybody else just starts getting excited and everybody just wants to buy. But there's a big chance that the security guard is going to deny you entry. We all know security guards. Well, if the security guards do get to stop you, and if they do, if the security guards do get to stop you, you'll have to make your way to the next office. Leave them alone. Move on to the next factory, hoping that access will be easier. You will be wasting a lot of time in the process, and as I've said before, time is valuable. Every minute you spend not speaking to a target is a second you're not making sales. And a second you're not making sales is a second that you are not making any money. Compare this to, say, making your way to the center of town on the weekend is different. Sure, you'll be giving up your Sunday lie-in or blooming and cleaning or Udla Kunklun, but this is where you're most likely to encounter big crowds and make lots of money by dropping a lot of sales. And because they're all relaxed and feeling more receptive than during the weekday rush, you probably have great results. Maybe you go to a park, you go to a shopping center, you go approach customers in places where they go to on weekends. I mean, I also like to hit virgin territories. Well, we'll call them virgin territories in our language. That's areas that haven't yet been explored by the other salespeople. This situation is a win-win all the way, because this is the first time that people in the area have been exposed to what you're selling. And there's a huge potential in that. Every single person you encounter might just want your product or even need your product. Even better, there's no competition. Plus, you'll attract attention simply because you're offering something new, something they haven't seen before. That's what's beautiful about virgin territories. You stand to make lots of sales. What's more, you can probably return to the same spot several times before it becomes saturated. Just like big companies who move and want to explore Africa to come and dump their products here or to come up with new innovative ways of empowering Africa, wow, they make a lot of money out of it. What did they see? They saw a virgin territory, an opportunity for them to make lots of money. That's how entrepreneurs think. But what's beautiful again is that even after you've made a lot of money in a virgin territory and nobody else knows about it, who's your competitor, you can always go back and keep making more money because you are the only one that's supplying that service, selling that product, or giving them whatever it is that you're giving them in return for lots of money that you end up making. This was a selfish situation with our colonizers, as I was saying earlier. They discovered and took Africa and her minerals for themselves. Well, a lot of them are still driven by greed even to this day. They still benefit from our beautiful alkebulan. They benefit from our beautiful lasagna. Of course, because of the way technology has changed our world, a well-populated territory doesn't necessarily have to be a physical space. It can also be online. In fact, if you're selling, you ignore the online community at your own peril. You need to take your business offering to the sites where people hang out online. Your best bet is to make sure your product is visible on social media, of course, especially Facebook, Twitter. Your professional profile is available on sites like LinkedIn, and of course, you are also on Instagram. If you're selling a brand product, anything that you're selling to the public, you do need to take advantage of social media in 2018 and beyond. Most social media platforms allow you to advertise to a targeted market very cheaply, but you can also do your own promotion using nothing more than carefully thought out hashtag and some good pictures or videos, just like what a whole lot of other people do. They create content that ends up going viral, and they take advantage by selling their product services, whether they are a comedian, whether they are selling a brand in that video, whether they are an actor. It might just be something that they did so they can create that much clout in themselves so as to reach as many people as possible, taking advantage of social media, which is pretty much free. Well, not free, you pay for the data. Another reason to go online: there is no way a business in today's competitive environment can survive without digital presence, especially since the first thing most people do when they hear about a new product is to turn to the internet to find out more about it. You don't need to go all out. Establishing yourself online can be as simple as setting up an Instagram account, a YouTube channel, a Facebook and a Twitter account, all very easy to do, or even YouTube. Ask Google if you need any help. That's just the beginning though. If you really want to call yourself an entrepreneur, you need to be active on all of these different social platforms. You need to start focusing on building a team. If you can set up a website that gives potential customers a chance to learn more about your business, along with maybe your contact details, say for instance a phone number, email address, simple stuff like that, where they can go to get a hold of you. After all, being accessible is vital, whether it's to answer a question about what you're selling or hopefully to take an order. If you really want to cover all your bases, create an app that links all these platforms. Going online has got its own other advantages too. It allows you to sell passively anywhere in the world. I know from my own experience that there's real value in taking to the streets, but there's no denying that it's hard work. It's actually very hard work. So if you can supplement your street sales with an online shop, it's worth making the effort. The other reason this is so alluring is because the internet enables you to reach customers far beyond your city, your country too, and that means earning in global currency. For any entrepreneur, the goal is to keep on growing, and foreign currencies gives you a springboard to do this very quickly, especially people who have even moved on to blockchain. People are exploring things like Bitcoin and more, etc. Remember that you don't necessarily need to have a tangible product to be an enormous online success. Uber doesn't own any inventory, nor does Airbnb. There's a great lesson to be learned from these brands. If you're creative, you can earn a global fortune. My own move to the online world is inspired by the need to grow, as well as the desire to earn foreign currency. I think that this need is even more pressing for social entrepreneurs because you need to grow quickly in order to help out as many people as possible. Think of it this way: you're investing a lot of time and hard work into making your business a success. So why not be compensated for your effort in international currency rather than rands in South Africa, well, in our case? Putting words into action. Now that you have the theory behind what goes into making a sale, I'm going to show you what it looks like in practice. As you know, my own life has been built on the art of the hustle, or on the art of hustling, you can say. If I didn't know how to sell, I wouldn't be where I am today. That's why, to encourage and inspire you while you work on your own selling skills, the next part of this book is devoted to case studies and examples from my own life. Each chapter heading is one of my own quotes, which puts into perspective how I've been hustling over the years. I hope that you enjoy learning from them just as much as I enjoyed compiling them, because I'm pretty much bringing you into my mental state as I'm on this journey of hustling or building my vision or my dream or my empire. So all of these quotes that you're going to hear, it's how I think. I'm basically letting you into my mind even deeper. Don't stop believing, no matter what people say. Don't let them tell you that your dream is impossible. Now, as a DJ and a public speaker, I make a living off my voice. It was always my dream to enter this field. Ever since I can remember, I wanted to own our own radio station just to grow and learn how does one run a radio station. But from the moment I tried breaking into the radio industry, I was just a little kid with no knowledge of broadcasting, media or radio. People told me that I would never make it. Well, they told me that I should try something else, maybe another career, because my voice was all wrong. Well, this is according to how voices on radio sounded at the time. Voices that gave you reason to listen to this beautiful music by Elton John or by Boyz II Men and you know, those type of voices from back in the day. A lot of people pretty much kind of felt my voice because it's like this, because sometimes when I high pitch my voice goes like oh you spoon alone, and you know, now this is me back in the day when I was starting out. I was not a DJ Smooth then. There was no you spoon alone type of thing. My voice was just not popular at all, especially with other kids. They said my voice was too gravely. I got picked on a lot of times, and then people always used to say I sounded aggressive when I used to take demos to different radio stations. In fact, people have been commenting on my voice since I was a little kid. Other children used to make fun of me, and of course it started to affect my own self-esteem. Until one day I asked my old lady, my mother, I was like, but Ma, was I born sounding this way? My mother's answer, she told me that my voice is unique, that the others were just jealous of me because their voices didn't sound like mine. She brainwashed me into thinking that my voice was special because it's all she ever told me every other day. And because of that, she undid a lot of damage that a lot of kids did in making me believe my voice was horrible. So that the next time someone else teased me, I could just shrug it off and tell myself it was because I was unique. When I started tertiary education at Wits Technikon, now known as the University of Johannesburg, people told me that I'd be great on radio because I had the voice and the personality as well. And I was always talking about music to my friends and different people, and I was always listening to music. A lot of people always used to encourage me to try radio out. My friends planted a seed, and I followed it up. I started getting a job first on local community radio station Tembisa Info Radio, which is now known as The Voice of Tembisa. That's exactly where I started my career, in the hood, at a community radio station that used to play music in cassettes. To this day, I thank Mr. Kenny Mameja, who was the first person to believe in me. He introduced me to Mr. Ray Nkwe, who was the station manager at the time. But as much as I received compliments, I also received a lot of criticism. When I started shopping my demo around into different radio stations, trying to get into mainstream radio, the feedback was the same as it had been when I was younger. The stations I applied to said I didn't have a voice for radio. The criticism wasn't constructive at all. It was just negative. In fact, the most unfavorable comments I received came from a radio station, which is the second biggest commercial radio station in South Africa, called Metro FM. They told me that I should be looking for another job elsewhere. Well, let me not say they. It was just one individual. At the time, they were a programs manager. Well, that's ironic because the station ended up employing me just a few years later, when I started building myself at community and campus radio stations, and my popularity started rising when I got onto provincial radio station Youth Radio YFM. Then Metro FM started getting interested in me. Then they wanted to hire me, until they eventually did. Of course, I began to question myself. This is now going back in the story. I felt vulnerable, and at times I doubted myself. That's only natural, guys, especially when you're young. But then I remembered that I was already employed on 2 radio stations. That gave me the motivation I needed to keep going with. I had already sent more than 30 demo tapes to different radio stations. I had not received a single positive response. But that didn't stop me from entering a competition, which was launched by YFM and Tropica, to find new voices for the radio station. I gave it everything I had. Even though the rules stated that you could only send 1 voice recording to enter the competition, I sent in more than 20 recordings every day for the month. That entire competition, can you imagine, guys? That was so irritating. I can only imagine how they felt when they listened to my voices then, because I'll just tell you the story now, how they reacted later. Well, I was nearly disqualified, by the way, but my perseverance paid off. I was shortlisted and eventually made it onto the station as a runner-up in the talent search. 3 months later, I was given a graveyard slot on YFM. The youth radio station was based in Johannesburg, and Mr. Greg Maloka believed in me. He was a programs manager at the time. He now currently runs Kaya FM, and he runs it successfully so as well. I'll always be grateful to Mr. Greg Maloka for recognizing my potential in the industry. I then worked my way up, acquiring all the skills I needed to be able to work as an on-air presenter. I would stand in on other people when they were not there to do their shows. I would research content for other DJs. I would call guests. I would do technical production. I would start using Pro Tools back when everybody else was still on Cool Edit and Logic. I was already moving on, hanging out with the DJs, going to the gigs with them, carrying their vinyls, asking them questions about the music, going to music stores, researching the music. Remember those days, there was not even the internet. You had to physically go to different music stores, the likes of Kohino in town, in the CBD, Johannesburg City Center, the likes of Look and Listen in Hillbrow by Pretoria Street, the likes of House Africa, just opposite the Boston City campus back in the day before it was Boston Media House. You had to physically go into music stores. Some of you guys who are familiar with these music stores can sort of relate to my story, because those are the places I used to go to research music as well. I was so entrenched in wanting to make it on radio, in being a music person, that I was also responsible for running the sound desk at YFM. Sometimes they wouldn't even pay me, but I wouldn't care. They'd be having the outside broadcast. I'd be in the studio running the desk. I'd be doing show jingles. I'd be recording, doing station ads, voiceovers, imaging, show promos, stings, drops, including stand-ins when other DJs were absent. I would fill in for them. Stand-ins, though, paid, which is why I love doing stand-ins. I was making a little bit of extra cash. I missed going to Ibiza and the Miami Music Conference for a few years because I knew that it was my opportunity to stand in for DJ Fresh's breakfast show. Fresh breakfast stand-ins paid the most. I knew Fresh Vinny, DJ Christos, or Skido and Greg would be gone for 2 weeks, and I'd be making good money when they go to Ibiza or they go to the Miami Music Conference. I know that I'd be enjoying my prime audience and introducing myself to the audience in Johannesburg as a new talent on air. Now remember, this was before I'd started doing primetime shows. This is when I was still building my name up in the radio station and still trying to get a slot in the radio station. The reason why I was proving myself so much is because I wanted them to see how serious I was and how dedicated I was in my job, that I would deliver in anything that I could do at the radio station, that I was not there for the money. I did each and any and everything I could because I was always at the radio station. I was furniture. My slot was on graveyard though, 2 to 6 a.m. This was when I was still proving myself, trying to impress Greg, showing him how dedicated I was. You name it, I did it. One day, Greg decided to give me my first primetime slot, an afternoon drive time show called Wyland. I got friends like these through Gaino Talent Agency after that. My agent at the time, Lisa Mudisane, made this happen. She also helped jumpstart my acting career as an extra on Generations. Then I moved on to start getting part roles on Generations, Gazlam, and Isidingo. A gentleman named Lloyd from the SABC introduced me to Desiree Magraf and Mr. Angus Gibson from the Bomb Shelter. I auditioned for them and they gave me a role on Yizo Yizo. Their business partner, Mr. Tebogo Mahlati, who remains one of the most amazing directors in the African continent. I worked closely with him and I learned so much about acting from him, working with him as my director at the time. I pretty much started getting into the industry as an actor. Well, I stopped acting though when I got a job at Urban Brew Studios to present a game show called Friends Like These. Now, that was the change in my life. Now, when I mention Friends Like These, I shouldn't forget to mention a game show I'd done before then, before the models like they came up with Abo Idols. There was Gumba Fire. That was my first main big break on SABC1, a talent search show that I presented on SABC1 for 6 months. That was what I got before Friends Like These. But when Friends Like These happened, oh man, I would say that it made me a household name in South Africa. When I was 21 years old, I met TK Ngliza while working at YFM. Together we started TS Records. Now that on its own is another book. Yes, TS Records is another book on its own. I've done a lot of things in my career and they cannot all be pushed into one book, but I'll try and share as much as I can as I go, guys. That's how I ended up becoming DJ Sbu. But none of it could have happened if I'd listened to the people who told me that radio simply wasn't for me, my voice was ugly, or I wasn't good enough. My full story has been told many times before in South Africa. It's all over the internet, but if you don't know it, buy my other 2 books, Leadership 2020, The Beginning, and Billionaires Under Construction, The Mindset of an Entrepreneur. That's how I came to be. Success isn't a straight line. We live in the internet generation. Thanks to the digital revolution, social media has become part of our daily lives, and through this, we get a window onto the world. Remember that Einstein quote I cited earlier, imagination is more important than knowledge? I totally agree with it. Your imagination can take you anywhere and everywhere. Add that to the exposure we get from social media and we can become unstoppable. There was no such thing as social media when I was growing up, but I was lucky to be granted exposure to an entirely different world thanks to my love for tennis. Playing tennis took me out of the township, showed me life beyond my borders in a way that most people, especially black kids, didn't get to experience at the time. Of course, the flip side of all of this is exposure, and that it shows us a way of life that few people actually could enjoy. The lifestyles we see on Facebook and Instagram are beyond the means of most of us, but we still aspire to live the same way as the people we follow. The pictures of celebrities going on exotic holidays and wearing the best brands, all of that places a terrible pressure on our young people. They want the same things and they want to take shortcuts to get them. That's why I think it's important for celebrities or successful influencers with a lot of following to show the other side of success, the part that's not just about fast cars. The reality is that there can be no fast cars without hard work. The record of a beautiful life can be inspiring, but it can also brainwash those around you into thinking it comes easily without working hard for it. I use my own social media platforms to show my followers the importance of tenacity, relentless, hard work, etc. It's all about informing, educating, and inspiring people out there. That's how I use my social media platforms. I'm open about my failures, and I do post them sometimes. I've spoken about my challenges. Although I do encourage others to get into the same place where I am, I'm also honest about the fact that there is no such thing as microwave success. I encourage young entrepreneurs who have joined the MoFire movement to use their social media pages in the same way. I want them to show others their stories and their journeys. I think that is very important, because when the people of my generation were growing up, we only saw the people who had already made it and learned about their success stories after they had already overcome their struggle to get there. We never got to see what actually went on behind the scenes and how they fought to win that success. Let's take my struggles with MoFire, for example. Back in 2017, we signed a deal that saw the drink placed on shelves of Pick n Pay, one of South Africa's largest retailers. But the people who just walk into the supermarket and pick a can of MoFire from the shelves don't know that when we first approached the country's #1 retailer, Pick n Pay, back in 2014, they were not interested in carrying our product. We had to get creative with distributing the product. And that's how we came up with the idea of employing young people who were in need of employment to involve themselves and start selling the brand MoFire on the street corners. In doing this, we created our own distribution platform, we managed to grow the brand, and we provided a solution to young unemployment, which is one of the biggest challenges that South Africa is facing right now. Our unemployment rate stands at about 27%. Our youth unemployment rate stands at about 55%. So it was a triple win for us, but we wouldn't have achieved any of these things if the drink had immediately been accepted by the retailers. At the end, we reached our goal of being sold by some of the biggest retailers, but the struggle continues. We are in some, but we are not in a lot. We're currently fighting this fight on a daily basis. We never changed our vision for MoFire, even though the way we achieved it, or the way we keep on achieving it, has been slightly altered. We're still facing challenges. For a long time, we didn't have marketing budgets to create and fly television commercials or roll out proper big marketing campaigns. Only now we're starting in 2019. People will see our first Mofile commercial on television, and they'll also hear our first Mofile commercials flighted on different radio stations, SABC platforms, and all the different private radio stations and TV platforms that are out there. Now, before all of this, we relied only on our model of building young street hustlers who became good brand ambassadors to get our message across. Instead of accepting defeat, we had leveraged the resources we could access. Our story shows us that you have to be flexible in the way you think about how to attain your success. It's about innovation and creativity, and social media makes it all possible. The fact is that there will always be challenges, but you don't have to succumb to them. Use the little resources you already have to make up for the ones you don't. Believe in you. Believe you can. In my previous book, Billionaires Under Construction, I talk about how people buy into you and your why. If you believe in yourself, it's easy to convince others to do the same. And when someone believes in you, they will respect your why before they even look at your what. In my case, people buy into the why of DJ Sbu. When someone purchases a can of Mofire, part of what they're buying is my image. People bought into me before they bought into my radio station. They bought into me before they bought into my drinks. But they buy into me because I've bought into myself. Just as you have to buy into yourself, you want other people to buy into you too. The thing is that when people have bought into you, they'll buy everything you sell them, as long as it makes sense. Imagine if you were at a job interview, for example. If you were on the other side of the desk asking the questions, would you hire yourself and why? Now ask yourself this: why do you want success? Why do you deserve this success more than anyone else? You have to find your own answers because no one else can find your why for you. You gotta find your own answers to that why. What is your big why? I found my why when I was standing in a room with 15 other kids who had also been shortlisted in the talent contest hosted at YFM. At that point, I had to believe in Sibusiso Leope before I could become DJ Sbu. Put it another way, I could only create DJ Sbu because I believed in Sibusiso. DJ Sbu was the music guy, and he gave birth to all my other brands. You can name them TS Records and all the other artists that I've represented in the past in my label, including Sahara, Mzegezege, Pro Kid, may so rest in peace, Brown, may so rest in peace, Briggs, Ntando, Ntlantla from the band Mafikizolo, and a whole lot more. The Sibusiso Leope Education Foundation, SLEF, our radio station Massive Metro, and our other company which has become a movement, Leadership 2020, the Sunday Circle, a series of talks by industry leaders, DJ Sbu Breakfast, Local Flame, our vodka brand, Maua, our liqueur alcohol brand. All these things, I had to create them and turn them into brands, but all was created by the brand DJ Sbu. But for me to create DJ Sbu first, I had to believe in Sibusiso. I repeat, that's why it's very important for you to believe in yourself. DJ Sbu could have never come about if Sibusiso Leope wasn't comfortable in his own skin, believing that he could achieve anything he wanted to. You have to believe that you can. That's where everything starts. You have to know yourself. You have to be able to shut all the outside noise. You have to accept yourself the way you are, the way God made you. Of course, this isn't a perfect world. We're all on a voyage of discovery, and when you're young especially, it can be hard to know yourself. Some of us mature only much later in our lives. So most of us are still finding ourselves long after our friends have already settled down. You can't let this deter you though. You have to keep working on your journey. You have to keep trying to find out who you are. Find out about your history. Ask your parents. Find out about your grandparents' story. Read books. Find out about other people's stories. Get in touch with your spiritual side. Discover who you really are, which will make things easier for you to discover your why and for you to believe in yourself. Realize that you will make mistakes. It is part of the journey. When things do go wrong though, don't be too hard on yourself. Remind yourself that we all go through difficult stages, and there's a reason for these. It's when we face down our challenges that we emerge as better people, as stronger people. Chapter 7, Taking Chances in Life. People have called me a chance taker my whole life. Some people view this in a negative light, and certainly some of the chances I've taken haven't turned out for the best. But the reality is that life is all about taking chances. Think about it. Even as a child, you were told not to put your fingers on a hot stove because you would burn yourself. But you did it anyway, right? Well, for me, taking chances is all about making a leap of faith. You never know how something is going to turn out until you try it. Taking chances is the only thing that's stopping you from becoming a 65-year-old who talks in the language of would have, could have, should have. When I was younger, this. When I was younger, that. Or only if. It's the only way you can make sure that when you're older, you don't live as though you are stuck in the past or you're regretting the decisions you took. It's a principle you should live by, not only in your professional life, but in your personal life too. For example, a few years ago, I was introduced to a very beautiful actress, very well known in our country and in some parts of the world globally. She had won major international awards. Although I was attracted to her, I thought she